This is Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman. And you're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam, streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 376 of the DCAU Review. I am your host, Cal. With me, my good friend and good brother, our other host, Liam. Liam, we have reached the final weekend of spooky season here, and we are wrapping up our, what I guess is going to be our penultimate stay with this new Batman Caped Crusader, at least with season 1, based on what comes after this. But we have an interesting and certainly spooky-themed wrap-up to this very spooky month of Batman Caped Crusader episodes.
Absolutely. What a fitting way to end the year, both for the show and for us successfully avoiding reviewing the Batman versus Dracula for at least one more year. We've kept the streak alive, folks. But yes, we have still a very spooky episode to talk about this week with the aptly titled Nocturne. Vampire ? We'll talk about it.
That's right, Liam. Before we get into our discussion of this week's episode, as well as our recap and plot synopsis, we're going to get the official IMDb plot synopsis for this week's episode in just a moment, which I will remind you originally dropped on the Jeffrey Bezos streaming network, Prime Video, Amazon Prime, whatever you call it, a year ago, at least at the time of recording here, back on August the 1st, 2024. And before we get that official IMDb synopsis, I will remind you and the good folks at home that it is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. Buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review is the best way to support the podcast. If you like us, if you like what we do, if you want to encourage us, if you want us to review more series like Batman Caped Crusaders and do other Elseworlds, granted, we got 2 episodes left of this, so you can't request a whole bunch more of Batman Caped Crusader, at least for now, until we get season 2. But hey, maybe you want to encourage us to review those final 2 episodes. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and bribe us in the same way that Harvey Dent is bribed in this very episode by Boss Thorne. You can do so by sending a one-time donation or becoming a monthly supporter of the podcast. That's right. We openly accept bribes here on this podcast. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. And as I said, you can become a one-time supporter or a monthly supporter of the podcast. And when you become a monthly supporter, you get a list of perks that come regardless of the level that you join. We have 3 different levels. And if you join at that top tier level, you get all the perks plus an additional bonus perk, which allows you to ask us a question about the episode we're reviewing. And we'll read your question and give you an answer right on air if you do. So whether you want to bribe us to do reviews of your favorite other Batman cartoons, or you want to become a monthly supporter of the podcast and podcast, easy for me to say, and ask us questions, we invite you to go over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So this is the synopsis for Nocturne, which was written by Hallie Gross, directed by Matt Peters, with music by Frederick Weidman and animation by Studio IAM. And that synopsis reads as such. When children start going missing at a Harvey Dent campaign event, Batman sleuthing into the underbelly of a local carnival hosting it uncovers something far more sinister.
I like that one. That's a good little cliffhanger, like a little enticement to watch the episode. TV guide worthy, in my opinion.
Agreed.
A+ IMDb synopsis writer. Great job. Talk to those other writers who have been slacking. Give them some support, please. Liam, we will continue with our own personal synopsis of this episode, which kicks off with a young child that we learn his name is Jace, being enticed by another young child named Dickie to escape the orphanage that they're in, at least for the evening. And to make an escape, Jace is a little bit cautious and not quite as rambunctious as Dickie, who decides that it's worth risking potentially being assigned more chores by Miss Tompkins in order to see what he calls something better than the circus.
Jace, wake up. What? Shh. Come with me. We're gonna get in trouble. Don't be such a worrywart. How's Miss Tompkins gonna find out? Besides, tell me that's not worth some extra chores.
Get out of here. Shoot!
Is that the circus?
Better. It's the carnival.
Why is that better?
Because carnivals are magic. The air always smells like popcorn and burning leaves. Those tents hold secrets you only uncover if you're brave enough to step into the dark.
It's not all that scary.
I dare you to go in there and pet that goat.
Nah.
Bark, 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 bark.
Hey, I ain't no chicken.
Dickie, don't.
He decides he's not scared. He's going to go into the creepy, dark, shadowy trailer all on his own, and we see that the young lady follows behind him, and the door shuts, and that's where we get our very creepy opening credits. So our credits come through, and then once we cut back, we see that Bruce Wayne and has brought a date to that same carnival. They're out and about. He notes that it's good for press. He's walking around with his date at the carnival, and he's not the only socialite that's there. No, it's also a good press event for Harvey Dent, who is doing everything he can to make up numbers in the polls. But they're both actually talking with Dr. Tompkins, who we learn, Miss Tompkins in this universe, runs a children's home.
Dr. Tompkins,
Bruce Wayne, aren't you a sight?
you should write a piece on Dr. Tompkins. This woman has dedicated her life to helping the children of Gotham.
Oh, thank you, Bruce. I know you hate all this attention.
It's a necessary evil.
Dr. Tompkins.
Mr. Dent, thank you so much for inviting us today. The children have been so looking forward to it.
My pleasure. I didn't know you two knew each other.
Bruce is the orphanage's most generous donor.
Really?
Hell of a tax write-off.
You're not fooling anyone here, Buster.
Dr. Tompkins is an old friend. She worked with my father.
Ah, always full of surprises, Bruce.
Harvey is supporting the children's home, not only for the press, of course, but he's there to give the kids a day out at the carnival, so to speak. So Leslie Tompkins, with her other, the rest of her children, the orphans that she has at her orphanage, are free to run about the carnival, all thanks to Harvey Dent. And so after Harvey gets his photo opportunity with the orphans, we see that there's Bruce wanders into a tent with his date, Julie Madison, and they're front row for an exhibition of some strange activity that's going on here. We have sort of like a I don't know. It's like a sideshow Tesla type thing. Tesla, the scientist, not the vehicle owned by the man that owns Twitter X. So it's very much a fantastical display where he has a heavy weight that he calls an individual up. I think that's supposed to be somebody. The volunteer that he brings up, I Googled DC and Morris, who this guy is, and nobody's name came up other than Grant Morrison. So I was like, nope, it's not Grant Morrison. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm going to guess that this large African-American man is not representing Grant Morrison, but I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. But regardless, the heavyweight gentleman is not strong enough, or is barely strong enough, to lift the weight a couple of inches off the ground. And then the doctor returns him to his seat. He then calls upon a young lady, and it's the same young lady that we saw at the beginning of the episode that was hanging out with Dickie and Jace. He invites her up on stage and asks her if she could lift the weight, and she says, of course not. So he puts her in a box and promises that he's going to transform her and give her the ability to lift up this heavy weight. And after some hocus pocus, we see that she comes out of this box, and wouldn't you know it, she's strong now. She's able to lift the weight with one arm, and impresses everybody, who is just absolutely crazy. Going crazy. They can't believe it. What a magic show. And then we cut outside to where we see Jace, now known as Jason, the young orphan from the opener that was left behind as Dickie and this mysterious girl went further into the carnival. And he actually catches up with Natalia and is inquiring about where Dickie might be. And while she claims not to know about his exact whereabouts, she says she thinks she saw him go into a trailer. So she once again entices a young man to go into the trailer. She follows behind him. And once she's able to trick him into going into a room, they actually both stumble upon a weakened and potentially dying Dickie. Once Jason kind of understands or comes to grips with what's going on, it's a little bit too late, as she turns around, and wouldn't you know it, Natalia, who is this young lady, actually begins to, I don't even know what you call it. Her mouth begins to expand, and she begins draining the energy, just using her lungs. I don't know. I don't know how better to describe it, but she's draining the lifeblood out of this poor young lad. And unfortunately, at this point, as she begins doing so, unfortunately for her, the scientist that we saw on the stage, the Dr. Knight, interrupts her, and we learn that he is in fact her brother, Anton.
What are you doing?
Natalia! Stop that this instant!
The show took a lot out of me.
We agreed that boy last night would be the only one. Half of Gotham is here tonight. We have to fly under the radar.
I can't throw him back now. Look at him. What's happening?
Come on, Anton. He'll be the last one here.
I worry you're coming unglued, little sister. You promise me he's it.
I promise.
The last one.
Don't leave me.
This will not be. This will not be Natalia's final target, as she is not one to keep to her word.
That's right. So elsewhere in this, as the carnival is still going on, we see Harvey Dent sitting on the chair of a dunk tank as Julie prepares to throw a baseball at the target to try to sink him. But as Harvey's engaging a little bit of banter with Bruce and Julie, he looks out into the crowd and he sees a familiar face standing there menacingly in the background. It's Rupert Thorne and his bodyguard Tony, and he's a little bit put off by this, of course. So and as he's distracted by that, Julie hits the bullseye and drops him right into the tank. So we see that he's a little worse for wear there, as he is. Will be cut back later after some of the stuff with Natalia. We see Harvey is toweled off and is walking through the carnival quite annoyed. Leslie tries to stop him and tell him that another girl has now gone missing. In addition to Jason and Dickie, now a young girl named Steffi Brown is missing as well, and that she asks Dent for help. Harvey completely blows her off.
Mr. Dent! Mr. Dent, one of my kids is missing. Steffi, she...
It's a carnival. Kids run around. I'm sure she'll turn up.
Sorry to butt in, but I heard what you said. Who's missing?
Steffi Brown. She was supposed to meet us by the merry-go-round, but she never showed.
What'd she look like?
She's 9. Green shirt, long blonde ponytail.
I'll look around. Julie, stay with Dr. Tompkins.
Of course, Bruce.
But hey, he's got other things on his mind, as we see him have sort of a back. Not, I guess it's kind of an alley. It's like a space between the two of the booths at the carnival, as he sort of lectures Thorne for coming to him so publicly, saying that he wanted to keep their association on the down low. But Thorne is quite calm about the whole thing and tells him that, hey, it's a carnival. Anybody could show up to one of these things. Everybody likes him, and he makes it clear that he'll bring him another donation later tonight, and that he can mix that cash in with whatever he raises from his less ill-gotten campaign donations from his constituents here tonight, and that nobody will be the wiser as to where this extra cash is coming from. So at that point, we see Leslie has found Bruce and Julie, who once again alerts Bruce now that this Steffi girl has gone missing as well. Bruce goes running off, telling Julie and Leslie to stay behind in case any of the kids show up back at the carnival. Bruce goes running off looking for her. He sees Steffi going into the Hall of Mirrors with Natalia. Obviously, he's a bit concerned, so he goes running. He gets a little turned around himself inside the Hall of Mirrors, bumping into things, and eventually he hears a blood-curdling scream from what appears to be Steffi, so he decides, well, I can't go meandering my way through this maze anymore, and he kicks through one of the mirrors, apparently not concerned about the 7 years of bad luck, though he does immediately find some bad luck as he kicks right through the window and right through the back of the Hall of Mirrors, the wood paneling of the wall, where several of the circus performer are standing.
Steffi!
Hey! Did you do that?
I'm sorry, I'll pay for it. Have you seen two girls around here? One has a blonde ponytail, the other...
Why are you looking for two little girls?
I'm helping.
Well, don't seem like you're helping. Look that way to you, Waylon?
Nope. No, wait!
Damn creep.
Which admittedly, when a 30-year-old man is breaking things and yelling about looking for two young girls, I can understand some concern on the side of the circus folk here. As the bearded lady and a green, scaly sort of looking man named Waylon interact with Bruce, and they're not so sure he's on the up and up, so they beat his ass and throw him in the ditch. It's just so funny. It's so funny that in the middle of this episode, Bruce just gets the crap knocked out of him and thrown in a ditch. But that allows Natalia, unfortunately, to abscond with a third kid, that being Steffi, as we see Anton return to their trailer right as she is beginning to drain her. He tries to stop her. He tells her that they can't be so careless, that everyone is looking for these kids at this carnival. The cops are now saying that they may not let the carnival leave Gotham until the kids are found, and she's kind of bringing the heat down on them. She's being so sloppy and careless. She says that, however, all that really means is that we just have to make sure that none of these kids are found. But Anton, I guess, finally has his conscience gets the better of him. He tries to stop Natalia from continuing to feed on these three, but she shoves him against the wall very hard. A big dresser or something falls on him, a big cabinet, and he complains that he can no longer feel his legs. She responds very coldly that he's the one that's being a baby now. He's the one that's being immature, and tells him that she'll be back later for the three kids left in their trailer. And we see her go off as we see the kids and Leslie continuing to look around as we see Bruce recover from being knocked out and thrown in a ditch. and running back to the car where Alfred is dutifully waiting, just reading a novel in the age before cell phones, so he has to amuse himself somehow while he's waiting for Bruce to finish.
The carnival is closing. Please exit toward the parking lot.
Master Bruce, are you all right?
Fine.
Miss Madison was looking for you. I put her in a taxi about an hour ago.
I'll come up with an excuse later. I need the suit.
Mischief afoot, sir? I saw Rupert Thorne wandering by.
Thorne's the least of my worries.
We see that Leslie has found Harvey once again, who sort of tries to apologize for not taking this seriously earlier, and tells Leslie that he will help her find the kids. As Batman listens on, and the other kids from the orphanage continue to call out, one of the kids alerts Leslie that yet another child seems to have gone missing, that being a little red-haired girl named Carrie. And that sort of sets up our final act here.
Yeah, so the little red-haired girl, of course, where else? Apparently, there's not a lot of security or locks on the doors or windows or care given by. Is Dr. Tompkins here in the case for worst? She's like worst adopted parents of the DCAU or of the DC universe, because my goodness, all of these
at the very least, maybe get some volunteers. Like, I understand maybe the funds are tight, although if Bruce Wayne is funding the orphanage, you'd hope that they'd be able to hire a second caretaker for this orphanage. Like, one 70-year-old lady is in charge of 25 kids. That seems like a little overwhelming for anyone. But yes,
agreed.
Leslie does seem like she was a bit asleep at the wheel on top of that.
Yeah, keeping track of these kids is hard. So she's out in the woods. Carrie's out in the woods, and she's using her slingshot to take target practice at some cans. And while unbeknownst to her, everyone is looking for her, Batman himself continuing to look for Carrie as well. They all think that she's in the carnival, but she's actually out in the woods. And wouldn't you know, as she's out there doing target practice, who should happen to be going for a stroll for that evening? None other than Natalia, who certainly has a way with words, and she's basically everything that comes out of her mouth to these kids is like really the devil on the shoulder.
Jeez Louise, you scared me. You by yourself? Should be careful. There's a kidnapper on the loose.
Then what are you doing?
Oh, I'm waiting for him. Setting myself up as bait. And when he appears, I'll knock him right in the kisser with one of these.
Can I try? I can barely see those cans. Why don't we go to the shooting gallery?
Carnival's closed down.
Not for me.
Stephanie! Carrie! Doc's really freaking out. I gotta go.
You always do everything grown-ups tell you to do.
Can I have my slingshot back?
Come on. When's the next time you're gonna get a night away from the orphanage? Let's have some fun.
Carrie, please!
What the heck?
Tries to get away. Natalia has none of that and begins to start draining the life, just as she did out of the other the other orphans, out of the other orphans. And but this time it looks like that at least this Carrie has a little bit more energy than the other orphans did, because she's able to at least put up a little bit of a fight and escape. And it just as Natalia chases after her, wouldn't you know it, she knocks over a tree, which catches Batman's attention, who's in the carnival, and notes that the tree falls over. So if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, but Batman is in a carnival that's set up adjacently to the forest, I think it makes a sound. I think we've solved that riddle after all of these years, at least this particular version of that riddle.
And I should mention, I think I forgot to mention before I handed it back over to you, that there was also a scene briefly where, after Batman hears that Carrie is missing, he finds the three kids and Anton in the cabin, and hears Anton's plea to save her before the sun comes up. So I think I forgot to mention that.
Oh yes, that is also very important.
They'll recover in time. As long as my sister doesn't come back.
Natalia did this? How?
She has a rare affliction. I found a way for her to manage it. Draining others made her strong. I love her, but she's lost control.
Yes.
Forgive her. She's just a child.
Where do I find her?
I don't know. But get her inside before sunrise. Otherwise, she'll be lost forever.
We got a race against time here on top of it. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen to her before sunlight. But if you know anything about vampires or vampires question mark, then you probably know. So as Batman wanders off into the forest himself, we see that Carrie is not quite able to make the full escape, just as it looks like Natalia is once again going to begin draining the life. Batman is able to intervene, get her attention, and Natalia notices that Batman has much more energy than these little kids. I don't understand why she's been feeding on little kids this entire time, other than the fact that they are easy targets. Why wouldn't you drain the life out of adult human beings? But here she is, and she and Batman kind of go at it a little bit. Batman says that he doesn't want to hurt her, and wouldn't you know it, it seems like Batman has hurt her, at least potentially feigning injury. Natalia tricks him into a false sense of security. He begins to apologize. We see that little bit of humanity once again come out of Batman. He's got a heart for kids. We can see that. But of course, Natalia uses that to her advantage and tricks Batman, begins beating the ever-living tar out of him. I guess the power of 4 children. She's got the power of at least 4 kids in her, and enough to defeat Batman, at least knock him a little bit silly. She then begins to drain the energy out of Batman. And just as things look grim for our Caped Crusader, wouldn't you know it, here comes a rock flying out of nowhere. Carrie's got her slingshot. She interrupts the procedures here. And ultimately, this gives Batman the ability to then share with Natalia that, unfortunately, her brother is past, that she's responsible for killing him.
Anton's dead, Natalia.
What?
You killed him.
No. You're lying.
I know you didn't mean to.
I didn't kill him. I couldn't. Oh, God. Anton.
We have to get you out of the sun.
Just go. Leave me alone.
I can't.
You definitely can. What? She's a monster.
We then catch up to the other victims, Natalia's other victims. Carrie is in the hospital recounting her tale of bravery, shooting Natalia in the face with her slingshot to Dickie, Jace, and Steffi, none of whom can believe the story, but Dr. Tompkins insists it is in fact the truth. Her and Bruce have a conversation at that point, recounting the tale. So Bruce mentions, she thanks Bruce for his help. He mentions that, all he did was get beat up by some carnies. And then he asks about what's going on with the young girl. They mention that Natalia is being kept in a secure wing and they are working on potentially finding a cure for her. We then cut to the legal proceedings that Boss Thorne has demanded in which Harvey, as the DA, dropped those charges against this guy. We see that the judge has brought or the proceedings have started, and the judge mentions that he hears that the prosecution is prepared to drop the charges. There's a brief pause where Harvey looks over at this criminal or alleged criminal, and they kind of make eye contact. He makes eye contact with the judge, and then he pauses, and then he says no, that in fact they're seeking incarceration for him to be held until the proceedings can begin. The whole courtroom is up in arms and cannot believe it. And we see that the criminal is hauled off immediately into custody. The judge agrees with this decision to hold him until the proceedings begin. The criminal shouts back at Harvey that he will regret this decision, and then we cut to the courtroom and who should be sitting there but Boss Thorne's main man, Tony, who's just staring there quizzically. We see later on, Harvey is out in the hallways outside the courtroom being questioned by the press, asking if he feels like he's going to be able to make up the points that he trails in the mayoral race. And Harvey says that he feels good and that it's close enough still for it to be anybody's race. He excuses himself past the press to go into the restroom where he's washing his hands, and he looks in the mirror, and who should he see but Tony walking in, telling him that this is the result of his poor decision. Tony pulls out a vial of acid, or a flask full of acid actually, and throws it into Harvey's face.
Hey, Dent. Here's what happens to double cross.
We cut to black, but hear Harvey scream in anguish, and that is the end of this week's episode. All right, Liam. So this is one of those episodes where, knowing what we know, so a little backstory. If I recall correctly, there was a episode originally in Batman the Animated Series run. I don't know how far it got in production, but there was at least a desire, from what I recall, that you pretty available, that they were going to use Nocturne, the character Nocturne, who was a vampire character that was pretty big in the 80s, but has since, as we talked about before we went on the air, kind of really not really been used in that same way. She was kind of a big Batman baddie in the early 80s. I think she was introduced in 1983 and had a pretty heavy rotation of comic covers that I can recall from Detective Comics during that era. And then once Crisis on Infinite Earths came about, she kind of went away. She's been back in a couple of different forms, and I know there's a Nocturna-like character that exists today, I believe, in the Batwoman comics, or at least did once the New 52 launched. But it's definitely not the same character. Regardless, they wanted to use her for that original Batman the Animated Series run, which had me like, okay, well, maybe this is kind of like an unused script. We're finally going to see that come to fruition. And I don't think, I would be very surprised if that was what we ended up getting here, because this episode is just weird, like, for me. And not weird in like a creepy, spooky way, just kind of like weird. It's just kind of there. I feel like they couldn't decide if they wanted to go full vampire with her either. It's not really explained if she's a vampire. And in a series that has already introduced actual living ghosts, why not just go all the way and make her a vampire and have her like suck the blood out of people and like be afraid of garlic and crucifixes and stuff? Like, what? This just feels like we have this creepy kid storyline, and Bruce Timm, who absolutely hates Robin, wanted to get all of the Robins in here so that he doesn't have to ever include any of the Robins, although he didn't use Tim Drake, so maybe Tim Drake comes around at some point.
Or Damien, yeah. There's
Damien.
a couple.
Yeah, but this just feels... I don't know, that it feels like it feels like the filler episode of a season of a streaming show that gets dropped in there. We get a little bit of breadcrumbs at the end that are important to bridge us to our next final two episodes. But boy, this just feels, I don't know. I think a little bit of a mess to me. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so there's like, I think this is a hard one to score, especially as we'll get to in a second. Because yeah, I overall I like the setting of this episode. I like that it's kind of contained to this one location for 98% of it. The idea of the spooky girl picking off kids and Batman trying to figure, it's not really a story of like, it's not a mystery what's happening. Like they show us in the first scene what's happening. So it does play more like the horror movie with it's just like you're waiting for the other characters to puzzle out what's happening. So I think that's kind of fun, and it's got like a creepy air about it. We'll talk about that certainly in visuals and voice acting later and music, but so like I like those elements of it. I like the elements at the end of, Batman having a moment where he doesn't really understand what she is. He knows she's already killed someone and potentially has harmed these three other children and almost the fourth child as well. So he has this moment where he could just let her be taken by the sun, and it wouldn't it would be the I didn't kill you, but I don't save you thing. It's the Chris Nolan Christian Bale thing that I always talk about how I kind of hate, which feels like a cop out to me. So I like that he makes the choice to save her at the end, and recognizes that even though she has done bad things, she is still just a child herself, and that no one is perhaps beyond redemption. So I like that element of it. But that being said, the thing about the vampire, I think you're spot on. We just had a ghost a couple weeks ago, so why can't she just suck blood and be allergic to garlic and whatever? What? Right. Why doesn't Carrie try to stab her with a wooden stake, and Batman have to prevent that or something? Like just go full vampire. Brave and the Bold did a vampire episode, for goodness sake. Right. A much like lighter hearted shows have done the vampire Batman episodes. So I feel like you could have just done that. And then the other thing is, like, and I think we talked about this back maybe when we did like our season overview episode when the show came out at the end of August last year. I think it's a real coward's thing to not do Robin in the show. like to do it like this. I just want to preface this because I'm about to bag on the Christopher Nolan movies again. I like those movies. I think all three of them are good. Some of them are great. The thing at the end of the third one where they're like, by the way, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was Robin, irritates me. Because it just feels like an added afterthought. Like, here you go, here's a little fan service. We couldn't possibly have used this character in my world, but here, somebody's name is Robin. Like, be satisfied with that. And this kind of feels like that, with like, well, we can't ignore that Robin, who was created in 1940, by the way, like this is his 85th anniversary this year. So Batman existed without Robin for like 10 months, and yet so much Batman adaptation like is afraid or doesn't seem to know what to do with a Robin. And look, I understand if you don't want to put him in the short pants and the pixie boots, like if that's a bridge too far, sure. But I just think if we can do ghosts and vampire girls or vampire-esque girls, and we can do all this wacky supernatural and sci-fi stuff, if we're going that direction, he can have a kid sidekick. Like, so, and again, we don't know. There's only been one season. We don't know if these four kids will come back. And it did kind of evoke if I believe it was Scott Snyder created the character of Duke Winston in a book called We Are Robin a few years back. And there was sort of it was like a group of kids sort of roaming the streets of Gotham doing good deeds, and they all had the R on their chests. So maybe there's that direction to go where they're never officially suited up superheroes, but they're sort of assisting Batman, because we do see Carrie save his life in this with her slingshot. So like I think maybe there's a way to do this, and maybe they become like, that sort of like they're like the Robin Society or something, and they don't actually suit up. But honestly, I would kind of just like to see somebody suit up in a Robin suit, even if they went right to Carrie being the Robin in a later season. I think that would be cool. So I just think it's a little, like, I understand it's not Bruce Timm's favorite character. I just think it's hard for me to divorce a character like Robin from the 85 plus years of Batman history, when he's existed for of the 86 years Batman's been around, Robin's been around for 85 of them. So it's a little bit to be like, we could just shove him off, or shove several versions of Robin off into this little side story in this one episode, and there you go, we've done Robin, we're done now. I'm like, right. I hope so. Let me just say again, the show's only existed for one season. We're getting at least one more, hopefully several more. But so I hope I'm wrong. I hope this isn't it for these characters. But as it stands, like, doing this sort of thing, as it feels like, I said, it feels like the Chris Nolan, like, here you go, nerds. Here's your Robins. Now don't ask about like if Robin's going to be in the show or not.
Right.
That's what it feels like to me, more than like, oh, we're doing this as like a loving homage, or to set up one of these four kids to eventually become like the real Robin.
Yeah, I'm with you. It feels like there is just, I don't know. This feels like this is going to sound extreme, and I promise you it's only for entertainment purposes. But it feels like the writers were cowards. Like, we're not gonna for whatever reason, the girl isn't going to explicitly be a vampire. She's going to drain the life out of people in this weird, like, alien way. We're not going to make it clear, though. And sure, her skin is going to burn, but we can't call her a vampire. Oh, by the way, we'll talk about it in visuals, but she also has a bat in her hair. the cell shading in her hair is a bat. But sure, no, she's not a vampire. Maybe she's a vampire. We don't know. Is she a vampire? But the fact that there's also not any reaction from Batman to be like, holy cow, there's a vampire kid here. I know, again, we had ghosts, but he was so reluctant to give into the fact that the gentleman ghost was an actual ghost that it feels like him having no reaction to this little girl draining the life out of him and her skin burning. It's just like, all right, well, I got to save her, and that's that. Like, well, I'm going to help her, and that's fine. Like, I don't know. It also feels like the little bit of a manipulative ending of Batman using her brother's death to be like, that's how he ultimately defeats her. Batman feels like a wuss in this episode. He's getting the lifeblood. He has to be saved by a 5-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid, whatever she is, and then ultimately like defeats her by her just being sad, by making her too emo at the end of the day. He just like makes her big sad because he reveals that she killed her brother, and then that's how he defeats her. Which, okay, Batman used his brain instead of his brawn because he's not gonna fight a child, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, so I did not like this episode very much, unfortunately. I think there are parts here that are interesting. I agree with you. The setting visually, we'll talk about that here in a little bit, is interesting. I think having this character, Natalia / Nocturna, as well as her brother, who Anton Knight was also a character, Night Slayer, in the comics. Later, also her brother, but later retconned to be her stepson, I think, in the New 52. But regardless, having these characters brought in, very unique to bring them in, but it just feels like, I don't know, just kind of feels blah. So for all of those reasons, I ended up giving the plot a 4 out of 10. I do like the fact that we have this Harvey storyline kind of running through here. But again, like I compared it to, it's like this is the episode that you find as filler in all of the all of the streaming shows these days that it's like, all right, well, we had to pad the amount of episodes that we had, and we had this one storyline that we could kind of thread in between here that kind of fits in between what's going on here. And we'll just run the Harvey Dent thread through here, and it'll feel like it's an important enough episode, I guess, or have enough action to distract from the rest of the episode. But yeah, it's important because we get to see Harvey Dent's terrifying attack being killed, or not being killed, being horribly scarred at the end.
Yeah, I went a tick higher. I was 5 out of 10, but yeah, for all the reasons, like I said, I like a lot of the way the episode's set up and the atmosphere. But yeah, like I said, I think there's just cow as you so aptly put it, again, for entertainment purposes, cowardly to not make her a real vampire, and cowardly to potentially not have a Robin in this show and use this as like the bone throw to people who were hoping to maybe see a Robin in this show somewhere.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be animation and visuals. And forgive me, I did not write down who you said was responsible for the animation this week.
We have Studio IAM as the animators, and it was directed by Matthew Peters.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. All right, getting things out of the way here. Well, you do a speed run here with some of the Easter eggs that we obviously have. They're not even really Easter eggs, though. But of course, Dickie, Jace, Steffi, and Carrie, they're the Robins, as we already said. Dickie he's the character model of Dick Grayson from Robin's Reckoning, which, of course, is based on the character model of the original Robin with the little curls in the hair. Jace, or Jason, some people might be confused. Like, wait a minute, this doesn't look like the Red Hood. No, but he was originally a redhead in the comic books in his origin that dyed his hair, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Right?
Correct. Because I think the idea was that Bruce was like pretending he was still Dick, or didn't want villains to know he was a different guy. So
totally normal thing.
Yeah, obviously
psychoanalysis on that one.
So he dyed his hair. I think they've brought that back in some of the more modern comics. I think Jason is a redhead with like the little white flare in the front now. So I think they've brought that back in certain comic continuities, perhaps depending on who the colorist is on the book. But yeah, I like that as a little shout here. And I thought it would have been cheeky to just make Jason the Tim Drake model from New Batman Adventures.
Sure.
Because that version, as we talked about a few months ago, has so much of Jason's DNA in it.
Sure.
But they chose not to go that route. So yeah, we got this little red-haired kid with his little like chipped buck tooth, and yeah, it's a fun little design.
Then we have Steffi, who is Stephanie Brown, of course, who that's the one that got me. Like, I know it feels like they wanted to do 2 boys and 2 girls. And obviously, out of the myriad of Robins that there have been, I think there's only been 2 females if you count Carrie and Stephanie. So yeah, let's go deep in the archives here. Let's go with a deep cut and have Stephanie Brown, who I think is the shortest tenured Robin of all time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a brief appearance. She's more famously, obviously, as you said, been the Spoiler, and then and more recently has taken on the moniker as one of the Batgirls running around in Gotham City. As I guess they finally figured if there could be multiple Spider-Men and multiple Supermen and whatever else is going on in DC and Marvel, you can have like 3 Batgirls and 2 or 3 Robins, and nobody's confused. Like people can kind of just get with the program here. So yeah, I think she's currently Batgirl, but maybe would most be known as the Spoiler for several years in the 90s, and a love interest of Tim Drake at times in the books.
There you go. And then, of course, we have Carrie Kelly, who not making her animation debut. Not only did we have the Dark Knight Returns animated films, but of course, there is a young woman who certainly looks like her, makes a brief appearance in the new Batman Adventures. Very interesting episode that I can't wait to cover on the show at some point here in the not too distant future. But yeah, Carrie Kelly, of course, introduced in the Frank Miller, the original female Robin, back in the 80s here with the Dark Knight Returns and the subsequent sequels to that series. But she gets to be the star, as we said here. She's the one that actually doesn't get the lifeblood drained out of her and ultimately helps Batman. The slingshot inclusion, I appreciated that also, really driving home, because that's really that's her trademark from, and the thing that people kind of recognize and know her for in that seminal graphic novel of The Dark Knight Returns. So I liked that. Of course, we have Leslie Tompkins, as we already mentioned. She gets her debut here in this universe. Friend to Bruce. That's no different. She looks just an old gray-haired lady. She kind of keeping with the standard DCAU or DC look there with her. And then we have, of course, one of those carnies. Is that a phrase I should be using? Is that a derogatory slur these days? I don't know. I'm gonna refrain from using it going forward, just in case if it is. However, the carnival folk that end up beating Batman up, one of them named Waylon. It's got a bit of a scaly appearance, I would say. So I think we get our Killer Croc for this series here. Although he's not referred to as the Killer Croc, he's just Waylon here in this. But I thought that was, I was hoping for more sort of cameo or little Easter eggs and signs or different displays at the carnival. It felt like the perfect place to do a couple of cheeky things, but instead we just get Waylon Jones instead.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent, I think, of again like his like 70s or early 80s look in like a Neil Adams, Jim Aparo style. Like it's much more of a human guy with a skin condition than a big giant mutant alligator thing or crocodile thing. Obviously his name's Croc, he's crocodile. But yeah, that like the version that you see in like the Arkham games or in the more modern comics, this version is a lot more scaled down, pun very much intended, to more classic look, and even less so, I would say, than the original BTOS design, where they kind of were going for that, but he was still like 7 feet tall and had like a mouth of all fangs. So this version is even like a little bit more stripped down to I think that classic Croc look. So yeah, it would have been cool. I'm just trying to think of other folks who could have perhaps appeared in there. But yeah, I think it's nice that throws in there. I don't know if is that also, speaking of perhaps homages to certain BTOS episodes, as we've talked about this month, maybe to Sideshow with him being in there with the circus folk.
Yeah,
maybe that's
probably.
Maybe that's a little homage there. And then as we talked about, I know before we went on the air, Bruce running through the Hall of Mirrors, and then Batman sort of skulking around on top of all of the carnival rides and stuff certainly seemed like maybe they were evoking a bit of a Baby Doll for sure, and in that way as well. Some of the imagery they use as well. So I thought that was some fun little BTOS homages, as we've talked about all month long here. But yeah, I think that's fun. The other there's a couple other DC and DCAU homages. One is, it's almost literally the first thing you see in the episode. You see a two-headed goat, and if you look at the eyes, you can see that this is Farmer Brown's goat from Critters. The same crazy eye theory that they created for that for I think some of those crazy Farmer Brown mutant animals in that episode. So of course Critters of all things is going to get a visual homage here in this new series that Bruce Timm and James Tucker are helming. So a lovely little homage there. And then yeah, there's a reporter who we have seen I think once or twice previously, along with a red-haired photographer, but this time she even gets a line or two, as we'll talk about in voice acting. But yeah, Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen are here. Lois Lane very much looking like her, the version of her from the, or I should say, we don't get a name, but it's a woman who looks an awful lot like the Max Fleischer Superman Lois Lane, and she's accompanied by a red-haired photographer in a green suit with a red bow tie. So you do the math on that one.
That's right. Yeah. And then I think the last little bit that I picked up there, we have Alfred's reading a book when
Mm.
Bruce gets into the back of the limo after waking up after getting beaten up by our carnival folk, and the book he's reading is Alias the Gray Ghost is the title of the book. So of course, anytime we get the opportunity to homage the Gray Ghost, it's apparently written by a Max Grantwell. Maxwell Grant, by the way, was a pseudonym used by Walter Gibson to write stories for The Shadow.
Ooh, ooh, there you go. So that's references on references there.
Man, with all kinds of deep cuts.
I was going to say, and I know we've talked about that in the past, probably when we reviewed the Clayface episode, but there's very few of those like pulp hero era radio serial and comic strip characters that any little references there. I'm sure they would love to throw in there. And then my only other note, and I should have probably mentioned this as plot as I did a little Googling. There is a character called Morris Eagleton who was known as the Gargoyle in a 1992 issue of Batman. So Batman 477 he appeared. So took some sort of serum that turned him into a big monster man.
Mm-hmm.
So only made one appearance, but I will say, unless someone else can come up with a better reason for why that big strong dude was named Morris, I'm gonna say that is a reference to maybe the deepest cut single appearance Batman villain that we've mentioned to date, that being the Gargoyle.
Wow. Great job. Great crack work there by our crack research staff. Great job, everybody. And by everybody, I mean Liam. So, great job. All right. So now we've gone through all of our Easter eggs. As far as the rest of the episode, as you mentioned, very fun locale. Anytime you get to be at a circus or a carnival, I feel like it just feels inherently Batman, whether it's in comics, whether it's in the, live action shows, cartoons, doesn't matter. It just feels like, yes, this is a setting where Batman belongs. And this episode takes place mainly at the carnival. So I love the little kind of kitschy idea of the attractions being more along the lines of those what would now be considered politically incorrect, with the bearded lady and the two-headed man and come on, let's look at the freak show type of idea that kind of very much, I'm sure, permeated the 40s. But also, some of the other parts here, the dunk tank, the fact that Harvey Dent is wearing like an old-timey man's bathing suit that is striped and has like a shirt attached to it. I absolutely love that little bit there. Like we didn't get the full-bodied men's bathing suits in the DCAU. Batman wore like Bruce wears like swim trunks, if I recall, in a couple of pool scenes we get of him. Like he doesn't get the full like that 40s striped look here. So the fact that they went all the way with that Harvey in the dunk tank is great. I do appreciate some of the other aesthetic choices for the rest of the carnival sequence. I didn't love the way that Natalia's powers are, like I said, evoked. I'd much rather have her been just a straight up vampire that drains the blood out of people. But it is freaky and creepy the way that her face just sort of, her jaw basically dislocates and then her eyes get real scary looking as she drains the life out of these poor kids, and in Batman's case, adult. So yeah, that's creepy enough. Like that's creepy enough. You're going for creepy. She also, by the way, looks exactly like Wednesday Addams, right?
Yes.
She's basically Wednesday Addams. And as I said, they even snuck that little bat in her hair. It's like the little cell shading in her hair is shaped like a bat. So just in case if you wondered if she was some sort of nocturnal creature that is often associated with vampires, she apparently has bat in her DNA. So that's a cute little thing that they included with that character. As far as the action for the episode, really the only action is the fight sequence between the carnival people and Bruce, like beating the tar out of Bruce, I think is the only real action that we get. We don't really, and then a little bit at the end, I guess, between Natalia and Batman that's very one-sided and is very, very quick. But yeah, it's fine otherwise. Animation's still stiff, very stiff. It wasn't as noticeable, I feel like, in this episode because you did have a little bit more cuts. Like it felt like there were more cuts between like close-up cuts to people's faces because of the amount of dialogue, I guess maybe, and a lot less character movement from scene to scene, walking across places and more kind of dialogue-based things. So I think that worked to their benefit in this case. But yeah, overall, I think with the setting, Batman when he does finally arrive on screen looks kind of cool, standing on top of one of the displays. I think you mentioned that kind of invoked, how he looked in a couple of those episodes where that was the place. Maybe the baby doll episode, maybe Robin's Reckoning. Where he's standing on top of one of those carnival places. The cape, we did get hashtag cape movement in this episode, Liam. The cape's flowing as he runs away towards the tree once he sees the tree fall. Yeah, there's enough. I feel like that this brought my score up a little bit out of just average, despite there being, some less than exciting actual plot elements here. So for animation and visuals this week, I ended up giving it a 6 out of 10. What about you?
Yeah, I gave it the exact same score of a 6 out of 10. I think there's a lot of cool stuff like we talked about in the character designs. I love the carnival setting. I like how eerie the bit in the woods at the end is with Natalia sort of chasing Carrie. I think that's fun, but yeah, it's we don't need to repeat ourselves too much because we talked about it in every review. But yeah, that stiffness, especially in the walking and like the lack of expression on some of the characters' faces when they're having these more serious discussions, I think is just a problem. But that being said, there's still some highlights. I think again the bit at the end of Batman, shielding her from the sun with the cape and walking away, and then the little bit of Carrie like sort of standing a little bit defiantly, but then running up and grabbing onto his cape because she's still like 5 years old or whatever. Right. So she's still, she still needs a little comfort herself after what she's just been through. I think that's a cute little kid thing that they threw in there visually. So there's definitely some good stuff here.
Should we mention also, there's probably, the most famous scene of Batman walking with somebody wrapped up in his cape is Jason Todd's death in A Death in the Family, I believe.
Ooh.
So I don't know how much of that may have been invoked, but also thinking about maybe the most emotional moment in the history of the DCAU of Batman walking out of the woods with a young girl that has dark hair, being Ace in Justice League Unlimited. Also, maybe a bit of a self homage here with him also walking out of the woods with a girl and a young girl in his arms that has dark hair who may or may not have just passed away. So maybe a couple homages there.
Yeah, good call. Yeah, good call. Like we said, that does feel there's a spiritual cousinness or kinship to that Ace scene for sure.
All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category of the day, which is going to be music. And once again, Frederick Weidman. Have we settled? Is it Weidman? Did we settle on that? I feel like every week I change how I say it. Okay. All right. Sometimes I feel like I say...
I'm 99% sure it's Weidman.
Sometimes I feel like I say Weidman. All right. Frederick Weidman, once again, responsible for the music this week, Liam. And as we've talked about each and every week, the great thing about the soundtrack is it's available for streaming on your favorite streaming platforms. If you want to listen to the particular pieces in isolation, you can. There's 2 that are listed for this episode. We have Natalia is the first track, and then the second track is A New Sunrise. So again, this episode has fewer sound specific tracks associated with it because I think they combined a couple of them ultimately. A couple of the other episodes had three tracks. As far as this one's concerned, we do get some creepy, like very creepy music at the beginning, especially when Natalia is speaking to these 2 orphans. Like every time that she says something, it's sort of underlaid with this very creepy, ethereal, like darkness is kind of how I described it. It is very dark. It is very creepy, very ominous sounding. That very much supports the performance that we'll talk about here from our voice actress in just a second. But yeah, that I thought was great. I think that stood out to me. We have, of course, our sequence later on where we're doing the hocus pocus where she's getting her strength from this magic doctor or magic machine that this doctor has. There's music that, of course, punctuates that sequence. And, every time she goes to drain the life out of one of the kids, there is this, I feel like there is a Nocturne theme. It's this, or Nocturne theme. It is this Natalia theme that kind of replays a couple of different times. And when she shows up and is kind of draining the life out. So I did like that. It does have, I felt like it had elements. Again, it's not the same tune, but it had elements almost of the 89 Batman Tim Burton theme. Like there's a similar chord progression in the way that the melody kind of goes that I thought was interesting. It kind of follows that up down progression that it does. So it did invoke that from when I was listening to it. So I like that. And then it changes to really creepy at the end with Carrie and in the woods, and the strings really come on. You get some real horror film shrieks that come in once she realizes that Natalia's probably trying to kill her and she tries to escape. So I thought that, combined obviously with our visuals, really invokes that horror movie type feel to things. And then the crescendo at the very end when Harvey's in the bathroom, he's washing his hands, and it's just kind of playing normal music, and then the door opens and this this mobster walks in and delivers the hit message to him, and as he throws the acid, you really get this real screeching sound of strings, and then you hear the scream as the music fades out. I thought that worked really effectively. But anything that I didn't hit that kind of stuck out to you as far as music is concerned, Leah?
No, I think that about covers it. And like I said, I think it definitely adds to the atmosphere. Again, my mind immediately goes to the scene of Natalia stalking any of the kids, but especially at the end when she's near the woods with Carrie. I think it brings in some of those light strings and I don't know if it's a xylophone or whatever that sort of bell sound is, but it's very very effective, very eerie. So I thought good, strong job for music this week, which is why I gave it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave it the exact same score, actually. So our last two scores have been exact there after starting out just a point off. So we're, as usual, we're right along the same lines. But in this case, we are exact when it comes to our music scores. All right, Liam, well, that will bring us to our final category of the day, which is going to be voice acting. So we have a cast of voice actors and actresses to talk about this week. Let's discuss our list of voice actors and actresses, shall we?
Absolutely. A big cast to talk about, as all of these Caped Crusader episodes have. So we'll get into them here. A couple of them returning characters. They don't have to go into too much detail, but we do have Vincent Piazza, who folks would probably know best from Boardwalk Empire. He's playing Tony Zito, not Tony Zuko, Tony Zito, who is Thorne's right-hand man, who, as we see, he gets, I think, the very last line of the episode. Well, technically Diedrich Bader does, but that the last words spoken, I think, are by Mr. Piazza as he throws the acid into his face. But we have him there, along with, speaking of Thorne, Cedric Yarborough, briefly back this week as actually he's very busy this week as he's playing Rupert Thorne. He is playing the crocodile-esque man named Waylon, and he's also playing the judge in the courtroom scene at the end. So a busy week for Mr. Yarborough. Again, I really like, I think we've talked about it for sure before, but yeah, him as Thorne he's just got such a quality. It's menacing, but it's not over the top in any way to me. Like, he's just got such this, he's got this like such gravitas to him. Like, it's just when he's speaking, he's in control. That's how it feels to me. I think he does a great job as this version of Rupert Thorne.
Yeah, he's got that quiet confidence about him that feels like he's threatening. He could also be like he's also like somebody's grandpa also. Like he's just like
Mm-hmm.
but the kids aren't like aren't wise to the fact that he's also this mob boss. Like he just has that balance of being like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm an old guy, but guess what? If you cross me, I you know, you're gonna regret it. Like he's just threatening in a way that is very subtle, and yeah, I love his
Mm-hmm.
performance as Rupert Thorne. It's very very strong, and it only gets stronger here in these last couple episodes.
Absolutely. We do have a couple of familiar voice actors in minor roles here as well. We have Gray Delisle as both Julie Madison and the bearded lady. And I think she's the unnamed reporter who happens to look like Lois Lane as well. So a big triple duty for her as well. It's good. Be interesting to see if we get more of Julie Madison. I mean, that's another character who I think was such a big part of like the golden and maybe the beginning of the silver age of Batman comics as like one of his regular love interest characters, along with like a Vicky Vale. And a lot of the more modern Batman adaptations, for whatever reason, seem to go right to like a Catwoman or a Talia, maybe because those characters fit more into the duality of him. So the civilian girlfriend characters don't get as much play, but I'd like to see them use a Julie Madison or someone like that. I think that's also a good way of just having a point of difference, is to have a regular person perhaps be a recurring love interest for Bruce would be an interesting change. So
Yeah.
I like having Miss Delano here as Julie. I think that's fun.
And if anybody can play a love interest to Bruce, we know Miss Delisle can, having played in Arkham City, Vicky Vale and Selena Kyle. So she's kind of just she feels like she's the go-to if we're gonna cast somebody as Bruce's love interest, regardless of the of what universe it is. Miss Delisle is in the running for being able to do that because she's played them all almost.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of names to her credit, as well as to Jason Marsden, of course, DCAU veteran as Richie Foley and Snapper Carr, and probably 100 other voices, playing Gorman, who is Harvey's trusted assistant. I think he only gets one or two lines here, as does Jason Watkins as Alfred Pennyworth in this episode. As mentioned, he just has the brief conversation in the car with Bruce, but good to have him back this week. We have Sungwon Cho, who is playing both the big muscle man Morris, and then he's also playing Matt Milligan, the con man who is seemingly about to be let off thanks to Rupert Thorne before Harvey doubles down. And this is a guy who I know his face from like Instagram reels. I think he's like more of an internet celebrity who has gotten into voice acting later. I could be wrong about that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's concurrent, but he does have a recognizable. I think if everybody looks up this guy, you would know him. But he has, to his credit, done quite a bit of work, especially it looks like in Eastern animation. But has done quite a few things like Beyblade. He's been on Family Guy. He's done a lot of like additional voices as well as that kind of stuff. So him around as well. And then we'll talk about we got a lot of young actors to talk about in a moment here, but we will mention another one of those, like, I can't believe they got an actor of this caliber for like 2 scenes work. But it is even though Andrea Romano has retired, she's not responsible for the voice acting. It is the kind of thing she would do.
Sure.
Haley Joel Osment, I mean, it's the kid from The Sixth Sense, so maybe that's part of it too. It's a horror movie. This episode is a horror movie involving children, so who better to bring in than one of the more famous kid actors from a horror thriller movie ever, playing Anton, Natalia's brother here, and he is good for what we get of him. We get him both as like the showman when Bruce and Julie are watching the display earlier in the episode, and then when he's sort of pleading with Natalia not to continue on before he meets his untimely demise. Just fun. Like, I didn't immediately. He has a pretty recognizable voice, I feel like, but I didn't immediately twig that it was him. And then when I saw that, I was like, oh, how about that? And then I assume maybe that's just a fun one to get in there. But yeah, Haley Joel Osment as Anton, the scientist brother of our villain here.
Yeah, super fun. Again, one of those things, as you mentioned, that feels very much in the DNA of the people behind the show. That they're continuing that idea of what if we got so and so, this actor that's kind of well known for a role in a similar style or similar themed type of film or acting performance. And what if we got them now to voice this character? So yeah, a fun one to say the least. Not a ton for him to do, other than I guess his death scene. He's got a little bit of that in that conversation with Batman as he's being crushed by the cabinet that fell onto him. But yeah, he is certainly fine. But I think there's more fun certainly in just realizing that hey, that's the Sixth Sense kid.
Absolutely. So that's a fun inclusion. And speaking of the kids, we have four. We have Carter Rockwood as Dickie, Henry Witcher as Jason. We do have Amari McCoy as Steffi, and Juliet Donenfeld as Carrie. I think Mr. Witcher as Jason and Miss Donenfeld as Carrie probably get the most to do in this episode because the other two spend most of the episode moaning and making I'm being vampired noises. But hey, we always talk about this. It can be a gamble when you bring in actual children instead of adults playing children. But I think all of our kid actors, as we'll save our, I believe the girl playing Natalia is a bit older, but we have four pretty young kids here playing our children here, and they all do a pretty good job. Of being sort of scared. Jason has this real like sort of sheepish energy about him. Henry Witcher is Jason, and then Miss Donenfeld is Carrie, just being this like fearless Spitfire. When she's facing off with Natalia by herself, and then when she's helping Batman, I think a lot of fun. A good job done by our voice directors and casting directors here for our child actors.
Yeah, I was to me they were so good that I thought it was one of those Bart Simpson things where they had cast like a female to do the kids' voices. And yeah, not the case. Actual children, and I think that they have some pretty decent talent here, especially when it comes to the voice acting portions here. So yeah, great job by all of our kid actors in this week's episode.
Absolutely. And then speaking of our kid actors, we have McKenna Grace playing Natalia, aka Nocturna, although she never gets that name. But folks would probably know her from the two recent Paul Rudd led Ghostbusters movies. People like those? I don't know. They keep making them, so I guess somebody likes them. But
Somebody
she's
does.
done quite a bit. She's done quite a lot of action. She actually plays the younger version of Tanya Harding in the I, Tanya movie. So she's been acting for a long time. So, and also does a lot of voice acting. I think she is very good. She's so eerie when she's dealing with all the other kids. And then you do get to see this like angry, creepy, like the horror villain really comes out. I feel like when she's playing off Mr. Osment as her brother. But I think just as far as capturing like the Wednesday Adams slash girl from the Omen or whatever vibe that they're going for here, I think she does a great job.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Like she's creepy. Like I said, every line that she delivers as the to the kids, coming off as this idea of like the serpent in the garden or the devil on your shoulder or whatever analogy you want to use there of her like being the temptation to have them go against their better judgment is so creepy and so good. Yes, it in really great performance. I really believed that she was this kind of, creepy child uh, slash vampire. So yeah, I thought her performance was fantastic. I think it was the standout. And she has a lot to do despite her kind of being more of a visual, like her powers are more visual than anything, but she does have a lot of the dialogue that leads up to before she uses her powers. She obviously interacts with all of our characters almost on screen, and has a couple of different emotions that she has to show by the end of that episode once she realizes that Batman tells her that her brother has died. So yeah, fantastic job. I thought she was really, really strong.
Absolutely. And then a couple more of our regular players. We do have Hamish Linklater as Batman, and Bruce gets to do a little bit more of the dual voices this week, which I enjoy, because he does has this very sort of laid back Bruce voice that he's in for a lot of the episode with Leslie and Julie, and then we get the raspier Batman voice in the final couple of scenes as well. So a good job for Mr. Linklater. A bit more for him to do than I feel like some of the other episodes that we've talked about this month, while he's been a little bit more sidelined, while we focused more on Barbara and some of our other supporting characters the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you can't complain about a lack of Bruce, at least in this episode. He's in a lot of it. Not a lot of Batman still, but we do get a little bit towards the end. And like I said, he does get the Batman voice. It did feel a little bit more like his Bruce in this was inspired by the late Kevin Conroy, and a couple of those inflections that he has. And we talked about that already this month, that he mentioned that he wasn't necessarily doing a Kevin Conroy performance knowingly, but then kind of listening back to it, he admitted that some of his Batman and Bruce definitely had some Kevin Conroy in it. So you can definitely hear the influence, albeit maybe subconsciously, for our Batman there. So yeah, not a ton for him to do as Batman, but some good stuff as Bruce.
Absolutely. And then we'll round it out. Since we end with him, as mentioned, we'll mention him last. Diedrich Bader back as Harvey Dent this episode. Again, the sort of the desperation that this guy is in as the election draws near, as we learn about in this episode. And then he's sort of trying to stand up for himself, even as he's still taking Thorne's money. As we've talked about, sort of the inverse idea of Harvey being the one that's perhaps a little bit more soiled and a little less angelic, and maybe the other personality is the one that's really seeking justice. So I think he does a good job of sort of playing that man at war with himself. And then when he does finally take the stand at the end and say that he is going to bring these charges against Milligan, I think it's a nice moment for him. And then we get, again, speaking of blood curdling screams, there's quite a few in this episode, but we end with this poor guy just having to shout his lungs out to indicate that he's just had acid splashed in his face. And as I think we talked about in the visuals, the POV being, we don't actually see it happening. We see we basically have Harvey's POV, so it's really only his voice to carry the agony of what's happening in that moment.
Yeah, it's haunting. Like, especially as I said, it works really well with the musical piece from Mr. Weidman at the end there. And then it's great too, because I feel like there's this subtle change, and you see it because Harvey decides he's standing up to Boss Thorne, right? Even though he's taken this money, he looks over and he determines at this point he's standing up for what's right. He's going to do the right thing. He's going to, maybe he doesn't take into consideration the immediate consequences that he's going to face, clearly. Or maybe he's just, his hubris assumed that he was, too big to be attacked, or whatever, that maybe that Thorne was bluffing. But regardless, there is an actual vocal change once he looks over at the guy that they're threatening to drop the charges for, and he decides that he's going to no, we're going to prosecute this guy, we're going to remand him to custody. And it just felt like that character gained a lot of confidence and kind of changed the way, for me, at least when I originally watched this, how I look at this character, because he's not really endearing very much up until that point. He's kind of like this gray character that's kind of a jerk and sexist and kind of a coward, and clearly just kind of unraveling in a way that is uncomfortable and doesn't really feel very good, and not somebody you necessarily want to root for either. And the fact that he stands up for him and he has this confidence that comes out in Mr. Bader's performance of like, hey, I'm making the right decision, we're turning over a new leaf, kind of gives you that moment, albeit a very brief one of like, hey, I like this guy. I want this guy to do well. And then that feels kind of immediately ripped away from you, and you hear that terrifying scream, and then obviously it plays out in the next two episodes where you start to actually do feel a little bit bad for this guy, where he made the right decision here to do the right thing, to not give in to the pressure to to allow the mob to continue to control and corrupt the local government. But unfortunately, it's to his own detriment that he chose to do that. But it does make me feel like I wanted to root for this character a little bit more, and some of that comes out in that change in how Mr. Bader decided, the inflections that he kind of gives, the interactions that he has with the press. Obviously, he's not adversarial with him at this point. He's just kind of like, hey, we're going, this is going to be fine. I feel good about myself. I feel good about the polls, all that. So a lot of that comes out in that, in that performance from Mr. Bader. And, unsurprisingly for people that have heard us talk about his performance in Brave and the Bold and some of the other times that we've heard him in the Zeta Project, he's a solid and sometimes really impressive voice actor. And I think this is a couple of subtle things here that came out in that performance that I really enjoyed.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think he's like I said, it really sets up Harvey's descent, as we'll cover whenever the next time is we cover Batman Caped Crusader in the coming weeks and months.
Absolutely. So for all those reasons, Liam, I ended up giving voice acting strongest score of the day, 8 out of 10. I think from our kid actors to our actress for Natalia, Miss Grace, and then we have a couple of the other, again, supporting actors here, Mr. Yarborough and even Mr. Osment's brief kind of fun cameo type appearance there, as well as our more heavy hitters that carried things towards the end there. I really enjoyed our voice cast this week. I think everybody's really, really strong.
Absolutely. Yeah, I ended up giving it a pretty strong 7 out of 10 as well. So yeah, I think everybody's good. And then yeah, Mr. Bader and Miss Grace as Natalia really bringing it up a few notches. I think they did a great job.
Absolutely, Liam. That will bring us to our final scores for this week. So totaling everything up for this week, I end up with a 25 out of 40. What about you?
And yeah, even though we didn't agree on every score, we agreed enough, or the points worked out where we had the same final score, that being 25 out of 40. As we said, we don't really do the traditional rewatchability since there's only one season of this show. But as far as one to show people, I mean, like I said, this is fun, like because of the Robin thing and because of some of the other Easter eggs, and if you know the backstory, but it's kind of asking a lot, I feel like, to be like, this is not one I would probably pick to show off right away. Certainly not in the same realm as the Clayface or even the Onomatopoeia one we talked about last week.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you with that one. While it does have obviously the importance to the overall series with Harvey's ultimate descent and then transformation, spoiler alert, into Clayface, or Two-Face, sorry, not Clayface, transformation into Two-Face. I think you might be able to put 2 and 2 together and just watch the previously on at the beginning of the next episode and still understand what happens. So yeah, not one that I would say is in the top 2 or 3 that I would say, hey, check these out for somebody that's looking to start this show if they weren't watching it in order. All right, Liam. Well, that would begin to wrap us up for this week. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Don't forget, we would love your support for the podcast, and there's several different ways to do so. The easiest way, the especially for people nowadays, is to just engage with us on social media at DCAU Review. We're on Twitter, X, and Instagram. We are also on YouTube. So if you search DCAU Review and find the DCAU Review channel, you will be able to subscribe to that, like our videos. Even if you don't listen to our podcast on there, it helps us out, gets more ears on the product, as people say, and allows us to get more exposure to people that may be looking for this type of content. And we do love content in the year 2025. We're big content guys, I'll tell you what. But yeah, follow us on social media at DCAU Review. Those are the best places to engage with us, at DCAU Review on Twitter and X and Instagram. We're also on some of those other sites where you following us at DCAU Review. If you're on other social media sites, we'll eventually get back to you if you engage with us there. We would also ask you to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app, whether that's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Both of those platforms allow you to leave a 5-star review. If you do that, that helps us. And of course, if you're listening on Apple Podcast, you can leave a 5-star review with a little blurb. That helps us out a lot. And if we see it, read it on the air, we'll send you a little thank you gift if you live in the US just for doing so. Liam, of course, some of the other ways to support the podcast is to purchase a shirt or a piece of merchandise from our store, which is linked in the show notes. Or, as we just talked about at the top of the program, you can become a supporter of the podcast at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review, whether it's a one-time supporter or a monthly supporter. And of course, if you're a monthly supporter at our top super friend tier, you get the perk of being able to ask us a question about the episode that we're reviewing that week, just like our supporter Zach did this week. Zach's got a question for us. Liam, take it away.
Absolutely. And thankfully, we're both here to answer it this week. I had to go solo last week, but thankfully, we're both here to answer it. But we do have a question here for Nocturne from our buddy Zach. And his question is, do you think that the reporter and photographer talking to Bruce Wayne in the beginning are Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen? I mean, we already kind of talked about it. Yeah. I think so. Obviously they make the choice not to name them. You know, he doesn't respond like, "Great question, Miss Lane," or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you would, I guess, have to explain why Metropolis reporters are covering a carnival in Gotham, but they're covering the mayoral race, I guess, but still, why that's relevant, unless this is like a like the DCEU movies, like the Snyder movies, where Gotham and Metropolis are like across a river from each other, which I guess they could do that. There's not really a problem with that, but that's I guess that would be the only monkey wrench thrown in here is why would they be in Gotham for something like this,
for multiple different things, because this is the second episode that we've seen with them in it. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where you can choose it to be as it stands right now. It's one of those things where you can decide that it is them, or you can decide that it isn't them. Yes, it's very clearly modeled after the Fleischer Superman Lois Lane. We know how much inspiration Bruce Timm and everyone else that worked on the original Batman the Animated Series was inspired by that series, and what a important part of animation history those Fleischer Superman cartoons are. But it also may be they decide at the end of next season that's it. The characters don't ever appear again, and it's just a fun little thing where if you know, you know, and if you don't, you don't. And Superman, we've already been told like this Batman exists before no other superheroes exist. So is it possible that this is Lois Lane? Yeah, absolutely, it's possible. But I think it's one of those things where you can decide it to be. You're not right or wrong if you say that it is, because we have no confirmation that it is or it isn't. I think obviously it's fun to say, yes, it's them. And you can come up with your own headcanon for why Lois and Jimmy would be covering so much of the public goings on in Gotham City, if you will. So yeah, I say yes because it's fun, but you're also not wrong if you say no. And And thank you, Zach. We appreciate the question. If you'd like to join Zach and our other supporters, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. And remember, join that super friend tier to have your own question answered on the air, perhaps on next week's episode. And speaking of next week's episode, Liam, we will be once again venturing away from our normal format here of reviewing a specific episode and off into the bonus episode world. However, this week, we're going to look at... I'm not ready to let go of the spooky season yet. You know, we got one more week. Halloween falls on a Friday at the original time of recording, which means the Saturday is just kind of like everybody's throwing their Halloween parties on Saturday anyway. So even though it'll technically be November at the original time of recording, we're sticking around for one more spooky Saturday. And we're going to look back, however. We're going to take a look at some of the top spooky moments in DCAU history. That's right. We're going to look at some of the more frightening sequences, some of the more frightening moments across all of the DCAU, specifically the episodes that we've reviewed thus far. And we'll maybe share some stories, some anecdotes from our childhood about the impact that some of these spooky moments had on us as little kids. Maybe we'll share a story about how one episode got us banned from watching that particular series for a couple of years. We'll talk about another one, maybe giving us nightmares and still haunting us to this day. We'll see what we uncover when we cover next week's bonus episode, 5 spooky moments in the DCAU next week on next week's very special and spooky bonus episode.
Can't wait.
Going to be spooky. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we'll catch you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Boo! Just kidding. Goodbye.
I was wondering if I should have said DCAU Review.
DCAU. Either one.
We have a week to work on the puns.